Should my CEO be joining or my CFO be joining? And I always say, this is a business conversation. This is about the success of your business and your people. So please, we do want that to be a combination of the two, because it is critical that the business leader and the HR leader are in alignment and have a vision for where they're going.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation, because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone, welcome to We're Only Human. I am Ben Eubanks, your host, and I am glad you're here with us today. I'm looking forward to an incredible conversation with Jen and Maria from the team over at Insperity. We're going to talk about some of the things that employers are dealing with right now. Some of the HR leaders out there are struggling with, some of the challenges, the trends, all those sorts of things. Ladies, I'm so glad that you're here. And before we get into some of the fun stuff we're going to talk about today, I'd love to hear more about who you are and what you do. Jen, could you start us off?
Sure. Thank you for having us this morning. My name is Jen McCann. I'm an account executive with Insperity. I've been with the organization 10 years and focus specifically on the middle market clients that we service. So employers with 150 to up to 700 worksite employees. Prior to Insperity, my focus was on sales and marketing and advertising, and did a lot of work along the client relationship management and retention, keeping a client, understanding their businesses, and then succeeding with them as a partner.
Wonderful. Glad you're here. Maria, how about you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am a 30-year self-proclaimed HR lady. 20 of those years have been spent in this HR outsourcing space. So for 20 years, I've been working directly with clients on their HR needs, 6 of those years here at Insperity. So I am working day to day with also our mid-sized clients to really help implement and assess all things HR in their business.
It's so funny how you boil that down to one sentence. Just assess what's going on in their business and line HR up with that. We know that there's so much more to it than just that one little line, but it's so great to encapsulate that. So let's cast a big net. Let's start off this conversation. So Maria, what are you hearing when you're talking to these leaders every day? What are you hearing as priorities from those employers right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are hearing a lot about AI right now. Everyone's very interested in AI and what it means for human resources, both how to manage it within the company itself and how to utilize and harness it. And I think it ties really nicely into what businesses are experiencing around recruiting and retaining top talent, which would be really the largest topic that I think I'm hearing from my clients is how do we get the right people here and how do we keep the people that we want to keep and assess the talent that we have to maximize it.
So you're interested there on AI. Do you think they're interested? Do you think they're nervous too about that?
Absolutely. I think uncertainty is a word that I would use as well. I think that AI is something in terms of HR that people want to talk about and they want to be versed on, but they don't necessarily know what that means. And so looking for resources and topics to really understand how AI can impact their business, I think is going to be crucial coming up for 2025, really finding those right tools to plug HR into AI.
Jen, are you going to double down on some of those, or you got some other things you want to add to the mix?
Oh, I completely agree. I would say, though, a smaller percentage of my clients are early adopters of AI. They're all in. It's internal. It's everybody on every team is using it, but that's not across the board. I think there's more of a, we know it's going to be good, but we're not quite sure how. And then it's understanding the capabilities and then the security around it, making sure that, especially with HR and even here with Insperity, how do we best leverage this technology? A lot of it is also data is so important. How do you overlay AI to potentially pull out of your data metrics and insights? And that's what I hear a lot of clients wanting to say, how can AI help what we already have in place to get the most out of this and help drive our business? So it's very exciting. I think Maria and I are both have clients that are really interested in this. And so we're on that cutting edge. I'm based out of the Bay Area, and so it's very prominent here. It's just the place where I am. It's just a hot topic.
I would probably agree with that. Yeah. It's this thing I hear it everywhere I go, whether it's within the US or even globally. It's a conversation people are having. And as well, there's a small percentage of people that are all in, that are making the most of it, that are getting maybe some bumps and bruises too, because they're running a little fast. We used to call it running with scissors when I was HR leader. Like sometimes we run knowing it's a little bit risky, a little bit dangerous, but we're going to do it anyway because we got to do it for expediency. But the others are saying we're trying to figure out how to do it carefully, intelligently, deliberately, so that we're not creating undue risk, because that's what's at the top of mind for so many of them. I want to go back to something you said earlier, Maria. You talked about recruiting, retention, and you use a phrase, how do we get them here? When you're talking to these leaders, are they thinking about the actual process of attracting the right kinds of people that are going to be bought into their mission, that are going to be high performers off the bat? Are they talking about that part of it, or just how do we make sure we're picking the right one out of the batch we have?
I really think that it's both. I think that clients that I'm talking to, business owners, all the way to HR individuals, are really saying, where are the good people? There are so many sort of obvious ways that we try to attract people. We have job boards that most companies are utilizing to some degree, LinkedIn to some degree, their own company job site that they are maybe driving traffic to. But that doesn't necessarily get the passive candidate interested in them as a company. That gets job seekers interested in them. But how do we find those diamonds in the rough? Almost what some of my clients I've heard call unicorns, those people that are really passionate about the same thing that their business is passionate about, or really have an advanced skill set that they're looking for. The feeling is, are we really looking at the best of the best for every job that we have open? And if not, how do we find them? Where are they?
As the dad of an 8-year-old girl, the unicorns phrase made me smile big, because yes, that's our favorite animal around here. But there are lots of companies that are saying, yeah, how do we do that? And it's always a struggle, because we have our good friends, the hiring managers, will put 17 required things on that job rec, and we know we can't actually find one of those. There's not one that exists on the planet. So let's start limiting that, narrowing it down a little bit. I want to ask the question that doesn't matter which one of you answer here, but you mentioned you're talking to HR leaders, you're talking to business leaders, you're talking about some of the parts of outsourcing HR and HR services, things like that. Is the conversation any different if you're talking to a business owner, a business leader, and you're talking to an HR leader? Are those subtly different? Are they very similar? What does that look like in terms of the tone or the priority set?
I might start with that. I often will have a client who's in an HR seat that will prospect say, should my CEO be joining or my CFO be joining? And I always say, this is a business conversation. This is about the success of your business and your people. So please, we do want that to be a combination of the two, because it is critical that the business leader and the HR leader are in alignment and have a vision for where they're going. Now, do we always see that? We don't. And I think that is where Insperity can come in to make that alignment or that connection to say, great success with your organization is coupled with great success with your people. So let's have that conversation about how both of those things can drive together and have alignment. I think the other thing is just that confidence. You said earlier something about feeling confident. It's also being confident so that you're all going in the same direction. And we all know how to get to Los Angeles, but there's a lot of ways to get there. Or maybe we don't know we're going to Los Angeles. So we're out there just skirting around trying to find the best path forward. And so I think both need to be together. The most successful.
Right. I agree. I think that when even going back to the topic of finding the right people, are we aligned on a mission that the company has? Are we really keenly aware of what that CEO or CFO, C-suite level leader is hoping that their employees embody and have? And how do we get that to the hiring manager? How do we get that to our job post? How do we get that to our LinkedIn profile so people are attracted to this company? Most people know the basic skills they have. If a client says to me, if I was interviewing for a job, for example, I can tell you that I can process an FMLA claim, that I can give advice on EEO matters. I can provide some talent guidance. I know the things that I've done for the last 30 years. But what I don't know is about that company that I'm looking at. I don't know what their core values are. I don't know what they value in an employee and what they're looking for in me. And so if we can find ways to get the business leaders to be able to communicate that down to the hiring manager level, that's where I think the shift begins to really attracting those people that match those mission, vision, and values that we are so important to any company, because it's how they work on a day-to-day basis. That's how things really tick.
And if I can add to that, as we're looking at a middle market space, what we find too is clients they'll start off as a smaller organization and maybe it's a family owned business and their HR person is their neighbor next door or their payroll person. And as they start to grow and there's more complexity and compliance starts to creep in, they thought they've been doing really well and they have been. But what got them there isn't going to keep them going. Or if some client recently said to me, we need to grow up and be a grown up business. What will that look like? And they know some of it, but are they confident? They're not confident. They know there's pockets out there and there's gaps, either in their knowledge or their understanding of the impact. A recent client has been with us for a long time, but they're growing. And to scale that growth, they need to put in the infrastructure and they need to have subject matter experts and they need to be looking at compliance and maybe some of the things that aren't as fun, but are critical to the success of that organization's growth. And the partnership with Insperity has really, over time, has evolved. And now we're sitting at the table because now they really care about mission, vision, values, leadership, alignment, who's in the right seat. Are we going to get there? And can we grow our team and educate our team and with training and what to make this a successful venture? Now they're in it. It's all in on this, but it's as a grown-up company, not as a startup or a mom and pop.
I told someone recently I would not be a good employee for certain kinds of companies at this point in my career. Like I like a certain pace and everything else. And the same thing is true. Just putting the job posting out there, I need this kind of person, this type of job build for the different company, different culture, different mission, different direction, all those sorts of things, different stage they're in. All those things can change fundamentally who's going to succeed or fail there. But all the resumes look the same. They all look exact. They've got the job title. I've got experience doing that. Am I a good fit? And so that's really important that you make sure, as you pointed out there, you have that clarity all the way through the leadership chain because you don't want them to have a vision of what great looks like here. And we're at the other end helping to hire and we're not meeting that vision because we thought it was something else. So that clarity, that communication around that, I think is so important. Jen, you hinted at some of the things there that really start changing and evolving as a company grows, the need for structure, the need for certain types of expertise, things like that. Maria, anything else you would add in there? Other things that change as companies start to evolve and get larger, they start to need other things, they start to have other growing pains, if you want to call them that. What does that look like and how should they be thinking about that transition over time?
I think that's where working with a company like Insperity really becomes ideal. And we saw that even as loudly as I've ever seen it in my 20 years in this business during COVID, because everything changed and my clients needed a sounding board. All of a sudden, people wanted to move to Huntsville, Alabama. They wanted to move to Alaska. People began to change their view of work. And clients were calling me saying, we've never had a remote workforce before. We've never had somebody in 15 different states. How do I know? Is it hard to employ somebody in Oregon? Is it hard to employ somebody in Florida? We've never had anybody live in any of those places. And yes, I did pick two of the most greatly juxtaposed states. Yes. It's pretty easy to employ somebody in Florida. A little tougher in
Arizona. Not so easy. Yes. Yeah.
And so by having a provider that you can really go to for those nuts and bolts, that's something that I see changing is that the nuts and bolts of, okay, we just found this incredible DevOps developer who has the skill set that we need. They're a great fit for our company, the great personality fit, great skill set fit. But they're in California and we've never employed anybody in California anymore. When you have the right outsourcing provider that you can go to and say, break it down for me. What are the compliance needs in that state? What do I need to be aware of? What can I and can't I do? You avoid the management by Google or having to spend a lot of time or perhaps legal resources to figure that out. You're able to pass that along to your provider and focus back on how do I make this a great experience for our first California employee so that maybe we can have more in the future if that's where the talent we need lives. And I think that's what we saw COVID start, but it has continued for these 5 years of really thinking outside the box of where do we find the people we need? Where do they sit? Where do they live? And how do we open our minds and our input levels, I guess you would say, to be able to consider a broader talent pool. And I've had a lot of clients have a tremendous amount of success with it. I had a client go from being in 8 states to being in 40 between 2020 and 2025 because they were really willing to say, we're going to find the talent where the talent is and not limit ourselves.
We had a chance years ago when I was working as an HR leader, and we had an opportunity to bid on this contract. We're going to split it with a partner. We could either get like 40 employees in California, or we could have 20 employees in North Carolina. I said, pick the 20. No, but there's more revenue. I'm like, I know, but there's a lot more compliance, hassle, struggle, everything else. We're going to create new challenges we don't have right now. Let's pursue this one. And so I love the options there. Yes, those things are, some companies woke up realizing, hey, wait a minute, I wonder where everybody is. And they checked and found they were all over the place and their heads start spinning. And yes, with you on that. Not many of them are called up to that, have procedures in place to, hey, if you're going to be moving, let us know. Even if you are remote, it does matter for taxes and all that other good stuff that kind of matters. But helping them think through, what does that take? Thinking through the strategy behind that is not just being remote for its own sake, but for the innovation, for the creativity, for the value of those employees that you could not have tapped into in your local markets. Again, Jen, you said you're in the Bay Area, right? You get priced out of some types of hiring there, but you can find great people in Huntsville or North Carolina or wherever else, somewhere in the US, and be able to tap into that talent pool that otherwise the other people there may not be fighting for.
Absolutely. I think that the other piece of that pie is that as we build relationships with our clients here at Insperity, knowing that they can make those decisions and have that partner, that I can pick up the phone and call Jen, that I can pick up the phone and call Maria and say, hey, we've got a great candidate in Wyoming. Never in our life thought we would hire somebody in Wyoming. Can you just run down for us? What would we need to change in our policies or procedures, even ahead of the decision? Just knowing, do we want to jump into California or not? Being able to assess that risk even ahead of the hire is a great way that my clients utilize me, just to understand what their risks are and then decide whether or not the value proposition is there.
I was just going to add, it's the changing the vision of where you can find your talent. It's also, I had one business leader say, I know John is doing a very good job. And I said, how do you know that? He said, because I can see him every day when he comes into the office. Fast forward to COVID, there was a lot of disruption in the business because he couldn't see John anymore. And he wasn't quite sure if he was doing the job that he had been doing previously in the office. And that's how he managed his performance. And that shifted the whole organization as to how they looked at performance, how they looked at their employee engagement, how they looked at development and succession. All of those things changed. And then you also add in a generational component to this. And boy, the complexity. So you've got the risk, but you've got your talent, you've got development, and the business had to change. It just has to. I always joke about the Gutenberg press. Like, this is not new. It's just an evolution of what we're going through. And it's a hugely exciting time, but also scary. I think we're 4 or 5 generations in the workforce now. Talk about managing and meeting those individuals where they are. It's a big job. And so we can help with that people side of it as well, which is hugely.
I'm looking at some of the data we collected with the team at Insperity earlier this year. And one of the things that stood out to me is I talked about the importance of having what y'all are talking about here, very practically, a backstop, deep expertise on compliance, best practices, knowing what those things are, because the research shows that more than half of companies that have 350 or fewer employees have someone in that seat, that HR leadership seat, with less than 4 years of experience. So they have probably some great experience, hands-on, all those things, but they don't have 10, 15, 20 years of seeing all these different scenarios and situations and all the sorts of things you pick up over time. I joke with students all the time. They're trying to get a degree in HR. Listen, once you finish that, you've got it all signed off and perfect, like 20% of what you need to know to be great at this job. You're going to need everything else you're going to pick up through your experiences. So the data are showing that what y'all are saying is completely true. Companies really need to have someone there, a resource, an expert, because you're going to run into things you just don't know, don't plan for. And the managing by Google is a great, managing by ChatGPT, maybe even worse potentially, but using these tools to try to solve the problems instead of using some actual proven approach or something else. Okay, so we've covered some really good things here so far already. One of the things I wanted to ask about, because I thought it was really a good tie-in to what we talked about earlier on the perspectives of the different leaders you talked to. The research we did shows that when HR teams are too busy, they are seen by leadership as purely administrative. They're not seen as strategic at all. They're just churning away all the time. And I'd love to hear from you, Maria. Have you found that to be true when you're talking to companies and working with them? Is that true if they're just continuously, always cycling through, running that treadmill. They never get a chance to do anything else. Are they seen by leaders as administrative, not strategic? And if so, anything that they can do to change that?
Absolutely. I think that you're 100% correct. When my interaction as a leader with HR person is all about follow up on data or follow up on forms or follow up on information, and it's never sitting down having a strategic conversation about where the business is going, it's a very natural thing to assume that's my job and that's what's important. If I am able to shift some of those priorities either to a more junior person in the organization or to an outsourced provider, or I think the perfect combination is both, then your senior HR leader can really step in and take the time to have those strategic conversations. Many of my clients, either if they're a HR person of one, they're able to shift a lot of those things to processing of leave of absences, processing of FMLA claims, processing of check the box trainings and things that need to be done, maybe from a compliance perspective. Another thing, as clients grow, and Jen talked about this, as clients evolve and grow with us, which we see all the time, it allows them to bring in a more junior person or maybe promote somebody from within who has had a interest in HR and allow them to be built up by their Insperity HR consultant so that they don't have to worry that, oh, we're putting this person with 2 years of experience on that day-to-day front line because they know there's a Maria or a Jen in the background that's going to really be their coach or their mentor to build those skills. And then that allows the true HR leader to be the partner.
Jen, anything to add on that one there?
I will say, I think the clients that understand how important their people are to their business put the resources behind that. So some of the organizations that I work with, one in particular here, they've got a really solid leader in the C-suite level, and it's driving success with the business. And we can prioritize and strategize. And I love the line of putting out fires versus fire prevention. We can be preventative and proactive with them. And that HR leader who's in the C-suite we're continually communicating proactively about what we're seeing in the market, successes that other clients may have had that we feel would be relevant to them, that they could be thinking about, planting seeds. It's made that business really successful. And when they have a bump in the road, and all businesses do, we've got that support for them as well. I would say that's almost even more important, especially as we've gone through COVID and then coming out of COVID where clients have had to re-engineer their business. So I think those leaders make a big difference. And that gives us ammunition to say to the leader or the organization that doesn't value or have a strong position in the HR role, how vital it is. Building that case and building, it's not a quick win, but it's, as one client said, we're taming the Wild West. So how do we do that? We're building on it. We're showing successes. We're maybe in surveys. It might be a number of different tools that we bring that tell the story without knocking someone over the head, but really saying, this is what's happening and this is how it can be better. That's how we would approach it. One of the key factors that I see time and time again is what drives a client to Insperity. And unfortunately, it's usually a pain point, whether it's a compliance issue, a benefit cost, an employee relations issue, that drives them to us. And then it's about what keeps a client and focusing not so much on waiting to react to that pain point, but getting ahead of that pain point. And oftentimes it's our team saying, why did that happen? Or how could we have averted that by having best practices in place? But time and time again, that happens. And recently I was talking with a client and I said, wouldn't it be great if we could be proactive about this and not wait for that pain point, which is going to linger for a long time? So I think that's the best part. I love it when a client comes to us and say, we're growing and we want a partner versus we're here because we just got hit with a very big lawsuit, or we didn't meet the compliance and we just got paying or something like that, or we're having trouble with an employee and we don't know what to do. And they now have a partner who can help them.
That's one of the things that we see, again, in the research where employers are saying, yes, we need help with compliance, but we don't want to spend all of our time there. We really want to be strategic. We want to focus on those things that do align with the business, that really add value across the board. And so definitely that's what the research is to back up that approach you're talking about, where it's not just, you don't want to receive someone all the time when they're showing up unhappy because something went wrong. You want to see them because they're happy and excited. Someone talked about this the other day in this context. It said, when people go to the hospital, it's usually a bad reason. When you're going to have a baby, like everyone's joyful. And it's that sort of thing. You want someone to come to you because they're joyful and they're excited about what's next, not just for the negative side of that.
I get it. And I see a client too that when we talked about gaps and knowledge, they don't even know the complexities that they've maybe. I'm dealing with one right now where it's a major issue. The client had no idea. So without the partnership with Insperity and our great resources to say, here's what's happening. We understand this is the situation. Here's the impact, not just the business, to the organization, and understanding that huge value to a company that didn't even know that they were sitting in a very risky situation.
One thing that came back to my mind from early in the conversation, talking about exploring AI as a tool to help us be better, exploring how do we convey the brand we have as a small organization and use that to compete against. We don't have the dollars to compete with the big companies, but here you matter. Here you're not just a number. Here we care about you and your family, like those things that make it different to work at a smaller organization. And yet you can never get to those things if you're only putting out fires. You can never stop and think strategically about how do I tell this message? Where are those candidates potentially meeting up? Where can we get in front of them? You can't ever stop to do that because you're too busy just running from problem to problem to problem. I've got to finish this investigation. Then I've got to go and reconcile the benefit statement. Then what about, did I post that rec? I can't remember. And your brain is just this hairy mess. And you never actually get around to the other things that really do matter to your leadership, the things that do matter to the business, because you're just trying to check off one more task in your to-do list day to day.
I think that the other great piece for a small to mid-sized business is that different than hiring an HR consultant for a project, when you partner with an outsourcing provider like Insperity, you're not only getting your one person or two people that you work with, but you're getting the power of the organization behind them. Ben, you mentioned the research we've done with you. I'm empowered by that research to bring that information to my clients. I have a compliance COE or center of excellence behind me, a talent center of excellence, different things and organizations within Insperity that really allow me to bring my clients a really robust, full suite of HR services, not just Maria's knowledge. I like to think I have a great source of knowledge, but I am only one person. So by having that behind the scenes approach where I can go and say, what are we learning from other companies about AI? Because that's another thing my clients all want to know. What are other companies doing? And so this really helps me be able to give a perspective on, let me tell you what was really successful at another client and see if that might work for you.
I want to ask like 40 more questions. I love the nature of this conversation because we're really helping to translate some of those, the business conversation into the conversation that matters for the HR leaders listening in here, but we're also covering some good ground around other big challenges and so on. I want to give both of you like a one last parting thought or a parting shot here, a piece of advice, maybe something you share with your favorite clients, but not all of them. And you can share that here. Something you want to leave the audience with as a takeaway. Jen, I'll start with you. Something that you think the audience would benefit from as a closing thought here. And I don't care if you double down on something else or if you've got one last piece of wisdom to share.
I think the biggest thing is really recognizing that HR is a very strong and strategic arm of your business and understanding that the power of your people can make or break that organization. And also leveraging the resources outside. Insperity, we have some clients who've been with us 22. I have one client who's been with us 22, going on 23 years. That business has evolved and changed over time. And we keep meeting them where they are and pushing and moving that business forward and partnering with them. And they'll even say this partnership has made our business more successful because we have all of you, thought partnership, guidance, support. So I think that's huge. And it's also looking long-term instead of short-term. It's really saying, this is the future of the organization and we're here with you for the long.
Love that. Maria?
I'd say be willing to take a step back and look at your organization as if you were looking at it for the first time. So many times when I start to engage with a client, I ask a question and the various C-suite partners or the HR team will look at each other and I can tell I've maybe touched on a nerve of something that needs to be assessed or addressed in our organization, but we're a family and we don't want to talk about it, or we know that it's an issue, but we just have overlooked or pushed past really addressing it. And by having someone from the outside kind of be able to peek into your organization, sometimes those tough questions can really help propel a business forward. I saw that happen again throughout COVID when businesses didn't have a choice but to question some of their practices. And I have seen that continue to evolve. And some of my most successful clients who I've seen grow naturally or through acquisition are the ones who took that sort of bullet that came from COVID and kept it moving forward and didn't stop questioning themselves and saying, where do we need to talk about the elephant in the room or talk about the difficult topic? So however you decide to do it as a company, whether it's by bringing in a provider like Insperity or just having a time where we say, okay, today's the day, everybody thing that they know we need to talk about, but we haven't yet to the table. However you decide to do it, be willing to really look under the hood and see what's ticking under there.
So I'm going to paraphrase yours because I think it's very fitting. It's look for the elephants and call them out, Maria. And then Jen, your piece there was how your people can make or break the organization. I think that's worth repeating again because the audience needs to remember it's not just payroll, it's not just benefits, it's not just another training class or whatever else you're doing around that employee to help enable them. It's either going to make the experience work, the product they're building, the service they're delivering, all of those things tree out from that. And if we're not doing the first pieces from getting that clear and connecting the value there, then why work for us? Why work for our company? They'll look for someone else that's going to treat them better. So thank you both for joining me, for sharing on this. It's been so incredible hearing your insights. If someone wants to learn more about Insperity and the work that your team is doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
I suggest visiting us at Insperity.com is the easiest way. We can connect you with a local provider. We have over 100 offices across the country. So people can connect with somebody in their local market that really has a pulse on what's going on in their own market and their own space. And just sit down and have a business conversation. That's really how we start. So Insperity.com and plug in your information and someone will get in touch.
Lovely. I'll make sure and get the link in the show notes as well as a link to the research we kicked around a little bit today. We talked about that a little bit in the conversation. I'll make sure and link to that one as well so the audience can go check out that full report, see some of the insights that were there because if anything today has resonated with you, then that report definitely will as well because it's along these same lines. Again, thank you to both of you for sharing with me and to the audience out there. Hope you got some great takeaways, some good ideas. Don't forget your talent is central to the business and the drivers of the business. And HR isn't just a call center, it's an innovation center. We'll catch you again next time on We're Only Human.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.